女方的婚前协议逼得新郎在结婚当天毅然决然地退婚。
This is a prenuptial agreement from the bride that has sparked heated discussions in our local area. It actually made the groom decide to call off the wedding on the day of the ceremony. Surprisingly, when the groom's parents learned of this, they were not angry but secretly breathed a sigh of relief. So, what kind of agreement is this exactly? If it were you, would you sign it? Let's take a look at its content together. In the agreement, the bride listed 5 major clauses with a total of 18 subclauses, detailing restrictions on the groom's behavior. First, the agreement explicitly states that all of the groom's personal property before marriage will become joint property after marriage. Secondly, the groom's monthly salary must be fully handed over to the bride, who will manage it, and she will decide the amount of the groom's allowance, including whether or not he can advance or overspend. Regarding childbirth and education, the agreement emphasizes that after marriage, the bride's opinion should be the priority. In addition, if the groom acquires any assets through inheritance or gifts after marriage, they must also be considered as joint property, and the title deed must include the bride's name. The wording of the agreement is very rigorous, with each clause closely linked, leaving almost no loopholes. What's even more shocking is that one of the clauses states that if the groom violates any of the rules, the bride has the right to terminate the marriage. In the case of a divorce, the groom must willingly give up all his share of the joint property and leave with nothing. Furthermore, after divorce, he is also required to compensate the bride with 1.2 million yuan, which must be paid in full within 1 year. Such a strict prenuptial agreement undoubtedly scared off the groom, ultimately leading to the wedding being called off. Now the question is, if you were the groom, would you dare to sign such an agreement?
Recently, a man who came to our matchmaking event expressed his own conditions to the woman. He said, "I can give the woman the requested 150,000 yuan bride price, but there is one condition: we must sign a prenuptial agreement." This man was born in 1995, and not long ago, through the introduction of our company, he met a woman born in 1998. The two originally planned to get married during this year's National Day holiday. However, the woman's parents demanded that the man pay a bride price of 150,000 yuan. In response, the man said that the amount of the bride price was not a problem, but he had one condition, which was that a prenuptial agreement must be signed. According to the man, the prenuptial agreement stipulates that if the woman cheats after marriage, the bride price must be fully refunded. If they divorce within 3 years due to non-principal issues, 80% of the bride price should be refunded. If they divorce within 5 years of marriage, 50% of the bride price should be refunded. But if they divorce after living together for more than 10 years, the man said he would not ask for the bride price back. Of course, he also emphasized that if the man cheats or physically abuses the woman can file for divorce at any time, and she can take the entire bride price with her. At present, the woman's family seems to be still discussing this prenuptial agreement. Do you think the man's requirements are reasonable?
这有些人找对象，那2个眼都白长的呀。我告诉过你们很多遍啊，选择大于努力。
When it comes to finding a partner, some people really don't make good use of their eyes. I've told everyone repeatedly that choosing wisely is more important than working hard. If you choose the right partner, marriage will go smoothly and happily. But if you choose wrong, they could become the source of half of your life's pain. Last month, our matchmaking company introduced a young couple. There was a girl born in 1999 who works as a receptionist at a private company. She's very beautiful, and her annual income is about 50,000 to 80,000 yuan. Through a matchmaking session, she met a man born in 1994 who has successfully started his own business, with an annual income exceeding 700,000 yuan. After their first meeting, the man had a good impression of the girl, but the girl wasn't interested in him, thinking he was too old and didn't meet her appearance expectations, so she couldn't accept him in her heart. However, the girl's parents thought the man was a good match and tried to persuade their daughter to be smarter, arguing that having money would make marriage happier. Thus, even though the girl was unwilling in her heart, she reluctantly agreed to continue seeing him. The man was very generous, bringing luxury handbags or cosmetics to every date, and after 2 months of pursuit, the girl finally agreed to date him. After dating for 6 months, they were preparing to meet each other's parents and consider marriage. However, the girl's parents demanded a bride price of 660,000 yuan and asked that the girl's name be added to the house deed, believing that this would give their daughter a sense of security and provide her with some assurance. This reasoning seemed fair enough, given that the man's income was high. However, when the man heard these demands, he couldn't accept them and refused on the spot. He explained that the house was purchased by his parents before marriage, so it was impossible to add the girl's name to the deed. Also, the bride price of 660,000 yuan didn't match local customs, where the bride price usually doesn't exceed 200,000 yuan. In the end, the man compromised, agreeing to give a bride price of 380,000 yuan and offer the girl 20% ownership of the house. However, the girl's family was very dissatisfied with the man's bargaining behavior, thinking he was too stingy and that someone planning to get married shouldn't be so tight-fisted. So the man made a further concession, suggesting the bride price could be raised to 660,000 yuan but paid in installments. 200,000 yuan at the engagement, another 200,000 yuan before getting the marriage certificate, and the remaining 260,000 yuan after the wedding. Additionally, he agreed to add the girl's name to the house deed after the marriage and promised to give her 20% ownership of the property. The girl was very angry about this, feeling that the man was being defensive, and that his refusal to pay the full amount before getting the marriage certificate and only adding her name after marriage showed a lack of sincerity. She was worried that if the man changed his mind after they married, he wouldn't add her name to the deed. So, she started becoming defensive too, insisting that the bride price must be paid in full before the engagement and demanding a voluntary gift agreement stating that no matter what happens in the future, the bride price would not be refunded. When the man heard this, he was furious, but reluctantly said he would go back and discuss it with his parents. When the man returned home, his parents were extremely angry and strongly opposed signing such an agreement. However, after dating the girl for 6 months, the man had developed feelings and went to talk to the girl, hoping she would compromise. The man suggested he could pay the full 660,000 yuan bride price at once, but wouldn't sign the agreement. If they had to sign it, the agreement must state that the bride price was given with the intention of marriage, and if the marriage didn't go through, 80% of the bride price should be returned. The girl refused, saying it gave her no sense of security and that she had already wasted 6 months of her youth, so she wasn't willing to compromise. She continued to apply both soft and hard tactics, explaining that the agreement was meant to regulate their behavior, fearing the man might fall out of love or cheat later, and she believed this money could give her a sense of security. They argued about this for half a month, and finally, the man suggested they break up. The girl angrily cursed the man as a traitor, accusing him of never truly wanting to marry her. 2 months later, the man met another girl through our matchmaking company. This new girl's family only wanted a bride price of 100,000 yuan, while the other girl remained single, still searching for someone willing to pay 660,000 yuan upfront and sign a prenuptial agreement. This couple's experience teaches us that emotional negotiations are not easy. A girl with a monthly salary of 6,000 yuan tried to negotiate with a man earning 700,000 yuan a year and ended up playing a great hand very poorly. Moreover, the prenuptial agreement itself wasn't the root of the problem. The real issue was the lack of trust between them. A prenuptial agreement is supposed to serve the purpose of marriage, but if both sides are on guard against each other like thieves, how can marriage be happy? The true purpose of such an agreement is to test each other's character, not to add a burden to the marriage. If someone's character is not up to standard, even with an agreement, the marriage is unlikely to last long.
现在这个婚前协议其实已经越来越普遍了。
Nowadays, the signing of prenuptial agreements has actually become increasingly common. Many young people choose to sign a prenuptial agreement before getting married. So, what does this phenomenon reflect? It reflects that modern people's attitudes towards marriage are undergoing significant changes. For example, a recent survey shows that 50.1% of people explicitly stated that they would sign a prenuptial agreement before getting married. From this survey result, we can see that most people who choose to sign prenuptial agreements usually have a higher level of education and income. Such groups are more cautious about marriage. Moreover, compared to men, women are more accepting of prenuptial agreements. Next, let us discuss why prenuptial agreements have gradually become a choice that more and more people are willing to accept, and the benefits they bring. First of all, prenuptial agreements help protect the legal rights and interests of both parties in the marriage. In a marriage relationship, due to various reasons, conflicts may arise between the couple, and signing a prenuptial agreement can, to some extent, prevent these conflicts from intensifying, thereby protecting the rights and interests of both parties. Secondly, prenuptial agreements help improve the quality of marriage. By clarifying the rights and obligations of both parties in the marriage, prenuptial agreements can help establish a more equal and harmonious marital relationship, reducing unnecessary misunderstandings and conflicts. Thirdly, prenuptial agreements help reduce divorce litigation. An important reason many people choose to sign a prenuptial agreement is to prevent the troubles and disputes that may arise after divorce. Such agreements can help couples reduce legal disputes over property division and other issues when divorcing. Fourthly, prenuptial agreements help with the reasonable distribution of family property. In a marriage relationship, the division of property is often a complicated issue. Signing a prenuptial agreement allows both parties to reach a consensus on the distribution of property before marriage, thereby avoiding disputes over property after divorce. Finally, prenuptial agreements also, to some extent, help improve the status of women in marriage. Survey data shows that women are significantly more accepting of prenuptial agreements than men, which reflects that women's rights in marriage are receiving more attention and protection. For today's society, prenuptial agreements are not a bad thing.
我终于跟我相恋了4年的另一半签了婚前协议。
After 4 years of dating, I finally signed a prenuptial agreement with my partner. Today, I'm here with my husband to talk about the topic of prenuptial agreements. Many people ask whether signing a prenuptial agreement will affect a couple's relationship. Should you sign one, and how should you sign it? Today, we'll use our personal experience to share and explore this topic with everyone. Does signing a prenuptial agreement really affect the relationship? Do we regret it now? I can say with absolute certainty, no regrets. It does not affect the relationship between husband and wife at all. Why do this? Because it's a way to protect the legal rights of both parties, reflecting the principles of fairness, impartiality, and transparency. When I first brought up signing a prenuptial agreement, was my husband opposed to it? He wasn't. In fact, he even felt that someone who truly loves you would be willing to sign such a prenuptial agreement with you and make this matter transparent. As we discussed earlier, signing a prenuptial agreement allows both parties to maintain clear boundaries in the marriage, giving each person's rights and responsibilities a basis to rely on. We also fulfill our responsibilities within this clearly defined framework of rules. This arrangement is somewhat like playing a game, where both partners respect the rules in the game of marriage. The second point is that signing this prenuptial agreement makes us understand that everyone in this marriage has specific tasks and responsibilities, which means we won't easily have unnecessary thoughts. Our goal is to move forward together and get better and better. Signing a prenuptial agreement also reduces unnecessary suspicion between us, as everything has a rule to follow, and neither of us needs to overthink. If there are any disagreements or doubts, we can resolve them through the agreement. A prenuptial agreement can also significantly reduce the risk of disputes over property. So, the question everyone cares about most is, how should such a prenuptial agreement be signed? Here, we've summarized 5 key points to share with you. The first is the identification of premarital assets, the second is the identification of postmarital assets, the third is the arrangement of postmarital debts, the fourth is the division of family responsibilities after marriage, and the fifth is the regulation of behavior after marriage. Let's go through them one by one. First, the identification of premarital assets. In this part, you can clearly state the premarital assets in the agreement, such as real estate, vehicles, valuable items, or savings. This way, these assets won't automatically become jointly owned after marriage, and the party owning these assets will still have independent ownership. In addition, the income from premarital assets after marriage, such as interest from savings or rent from rental properties, can also be clearly stated as personal assets, and both parties can reach a consensus on these matters. Next is the identification of postmarital assets. This part can specify whether postmarital assets are jointly owned by the couple, individually owned, or determined by agreement. For example, company profits and individual dividends can be explicitly stated as belonging to one party. The third point is the arrangement of postmarital debts. Whoever borrows the money is responsible for repaying it. If a loan is needed after marriage, it must be agreed upon and signed by the other party. If it is later recognized as joint marital debt, even if joint liability is determined, it is possible to seek reimbursement from the borrowing party. After marriage, one should not become an innocent big fool just because of getting married. The fourth point is the division of family responsibilities after marriage. In marriage, the husband should also take on some family responsibilities to avoid a so-called widow-like marriage. Although some may argue that the contents of a prenuptial agreement cannot be enforced, in reality, we can fully ensure compliance by setting up penalties for breach of contract. If the other party refuses to contribute to household chores, financial compensation can be used to ensure the fulfillment of household responsibilities. For full-time housewives, this arrangement also protects their rights and interests. Finally, there is the regulation of behavior after marriage. For example, if one party commits adultery, it can be stipulated that a high penalty must be paid, which can reduce the likelihood of infidelity to some extent. In our agreement, we explicitly stated that if either party commits adultery, that party must transfer all assets to the children. Does such a clause need to be notarized? Generally speaking, a prenuptial agreement only needs both parties' signatures to take effect, but if issues such as adultery or child custody are involved, they need to be handled through court decisions. These are some tips and experiences we've shared about prenuptial agreements. Personally, I believe that a prenuptial agreement is a good protection for both of us. By signing the agreement, our love for each other has deepened, because in this relationship, we are working together under a shared framework of rules. Doing so makes our hearts more united, and there's no need to worry that this will negatively affect the relationship. On the contrary, it makes our trust in each other even stronger.
Regarding the legal validity of a prenuptial agreement, I specifically consulted a lawyer friend, and here's his explanation. The legal validity of a prenuptial agreement should be judged based on the specific legality of each clause, rather than simply affirming or denying the entire agreement. In practice, many prenuptial agreements drafted by parties usually cover the following categories: agreements on property distribution, agreements on loyalty obligations, divorce-related clauses, and corresponding breach of contract provisions. Among these clauses, agreements on property distribution are the most likely to gain legal support. The law allows spouses to negotiate and arrange the ownership and management of premarital, postmarital personal property, and jointly owned marital property. If both parties clearly sign a property agreement, such as an AA system, where each party independently manages their finances, the law supports such an agreement. In the absence of an agreement, the marital property regime applies, but it does not mean that other agreements are not allowed. As for loyalty obligations, the marriage law has already stipulated that spouses should fulfill their loyalty obligations, so there is no need to specifically include this in the prenuptial agreement. However, many are more concerned about whether responsibility can be pre-agreed in case one party violates this loyalty obligation. It should be noted that breach of contract clauses must be legal. For example, a clause that directly states the unfaithful party must leave the marriage with nothing is generally not supported by the law. Regarding divorce-related clauses, many people will list circumstances in the prenuptial agreement where a party can unconditionally divorce after marriage, such as in cases of infidelity. However, such clauses do not have direct legal effect. The legal standard for divorce is whether the relationship between the couple has broken down, and whether this standard is met is judged by the court based on the specific situation. However, prearranged agreements can be considered as a factor in divorce litigation, showing the importance the parties place on these issues. As for whether a prenuptial agreement is necessary, it depends on personal circumstances. While marriage is full of romance, it also has a practical aspect. Sometimes, a marriage certificate with a seal can make a marriage happier and more lasting than a lavish wedding ceremony. Therefore, whether a prenuptial agreement is needed depends on the actual needs and marital status of both parties. After listening to my lawyer friend's explanation, I feel quite uncomfortable with the idea of signing a prenuptial agreement. Although I understand the necessity of such an agreement in reality, it always feels like modern marriages have become too practical and cold, losing the warmth they should have. What do you think about signing a prenuptial agreement? Feel free to leave your comments below. I would love to hear your opinions. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us, and we will continue to provide you with better content. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.